There is a Swiss luxury watch that matches Rolex in quality and history, yet sits on the secondary market today for under $1,000. Since its founding in 1848, Omega has built a documented track record of precision. They are the official timekeepers of the Olympic Games, and their movements were relied upon by the military during both World Wars. But if you ask the average buyer what Omega represents, they will point to two things: James Bond and the Apollo 11 moon landing. The cultural fame of the Speedmaster and the Seamaster has completely overshadowed Omega's premier precision line. This creates a specific trade-off. You give up the immediate, recognizable brand flex of a Rolex, and in exchange, you must put in the effort to hunt down a pristine vintage piece. Buying an authentic example requires meticulous research to navigate redials, replaced parts, and other vintage pitfalls. Because the mainstream market has overlooked it, the Omega Constellation remains the single greatest value arbitrage in classic horology. Omega launched the Constellation in 1952 as a dedicated precision tool, engineered specifically to satisfy the requirements of external observatory trials. Each movement was subjected to rigorous, independent trials at Swiss observatories, tested across multiple temperatures and positions for extreme accuracy. Passing these trials meant the watch received an official chronometer certificate, signed by an observatory scientist. Achieving this certified precision required an intensive manufacturing process, which drove up Omega's production costs. In 1965, a Constellation and a Rolex Datejust sat at the exact same price point. Today, the divergence is massive. The Datejust costs 3 to 5 times more, while the Constellation stays flat under $1,000. This pricing gap is driven entirely by brand recognition. The objective build quality between the two watches remains equal, so the dilemma is clear. How do you take advantage of this pricing gap without accidentally buying a ruined or counterfeit vintage watch? The mechanical heart of the Constellation's golden era is the caliber 564 automatic movement. It is exceptionally reliable. When properly serviced, it keeps time to within a few seconds a day, meeting modern accuracy standards. The trade-off here is maintenance. If you buy an unserviced piece, you need to immediately budget for a professional watchmaker to clean and oil the movement. Surrounding that movement in the 1950s and 60s models is the famous pie-pan dial, a highly complex piece of microarchitecture. The three-dimensional concentric rings and applied hour markers sit at varying depths, designed to uniquely catch and reflect ambient light from every angle. Because of those sharp steps, a damaged dial is incredibly difficult to restore convincingly. Refinishing almost always ruins the crisp edges. These pie-pan references carry a high restoration risk, but they reward that risk by delivering museum-grade artistry and the peak of mid-century Swiss design. By 1982, Omega initiated a radical departure from this traditional aesthetic language with the C-shape redesign. This image compares the traditional round case to the new era. The C-shape introduces distinctive physical features, an integrated bracelet, and prominent claw lugs gripping the sides. Mechanically, the line also shifted, replacing the mechanical chronometers with highly accurate battery-powered quartz movements. Traditional collectors find this design polarizing, yet younger buyers are actively embracing the unashamedly 80s look. Embracing the divisive 1980s design language is the strategic move required to access genuine Omega heritage for as little as $200. To safely purchase a vintage Constellation, you need a strict 4-point authentication protocol. This scorecard tracks the process, and the first item is the caseback medallion. A sharp, three-dimensional relief sculpture on the back proves the case hasn't been aggressively ground down and over-polished by previous owners. The second step is the caliber match. You must verify that the internal movement numbers align exactly with the watch reference to protect your long-term investment. The third check is dial originality. You have to accept mild, natural aging. A slightly faded original dial is always worth more than a fake, repainted surface that looks perfect. The final step is setting price parameters. A clean, honest example will require a realistic budget of between $500 and $1,500. Navigating this rigorous, slow checklist is the exact cost of entry. It is the filter that keeps Constellation prices heavily discounted compared to their rivals. This decision matrix maps 4 buyer profiles based on budget and aesthetic. First is the purist, spending up to $3,000 with patience for a pristine 1950s pie-pan dial. Second is the practical enthusiast, budgeting $1,500 for a 1960s caliber 564 automatic. Choosing between these two comes down to weighing your desire for extreme visual drama against the need for robust, everyday reliability. Returning to the matrix, we have the budget trendsetter. You'll spend up to $600 on the 1980s C-shape, embracing its quartz-era aesthetic. Finally, the historian. You are hunting strictly for the founding 1952 chronometer with original paperwork, requiring significant networking to source. Whichever profile you fit, the reality remains. The Constellation wasn't forgotten for inferior engineering. It was simply eclipsed by the louder marketing of its siblings. You secure premier Swiss watchmaking at a massive discount, but you must be satisfied knowing you will impress dedicated horologists rather than the general public. If you want to find more overlooked watch opportunities before the mainstream market inevitably corrects these pricing gaps, subscribe. We will see you in the next one.